I first came into contact with the mental health service when I was about 18. At that time, way back then, I received a psychiatric diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And I remember when I was first told that, I had a sense of relief that, wow, there's a name for this thing, because I would struggle with chronic suicidal ideation. So I presented to the hospital frequently after a suicide attempt. And so I was labelled as manipulative and attention-seeking. I was told I was a waste of resources. I remember one time when I was being transported to hospital in the ambulance, the paramedics said to me that they were wasting time on me when there were other people out there that really needed help. So a lot of stigma around that. And I am now in the position that the things that I live with now are much more related to my experiences within the mental health system rather than the stuff that brought me into contact with that system in the first place. And I guess for that reason, and over the years, my perspective on the whole concept of mental illness has evolved. As time has gone on, there has been a bit of a shift that the what we call the medical model of mental illness is starting to get challenged a lot more, and a lot of people are starting to shift more towards a trauma-informed model. And the basic premise of that is that from the medical model perspective, you would start off with the question of what is wrong with this person. Whereas when you start from a trauma-informed approach, then you start with what happened to this person. We know that trauma, particularly developmental trauma that occurs in childhood, it structurally changes the brain. So if you look at a brain scan of a child that's been severely neglected versus a typically developing child, their brains look different. So it's not an illness, it's brain damage. I came into contact with mental health services in my late teens, and it was after a catastrophic loss. I experienced a major catastrophic loss. And what I actually was experiencing was overwhelming grief. But it was pathologized as a frantic effort to avoid really imagined abandonment and all of that. And so rather than getting supported through that grief, I was, locked in seclusion and forcibly medicated and all those things, which has massively complicated my story. In terms of the medical model, there are mentally ill people, and then there's people who aren't mentally ill. And I would challenge that dichotomy. I would say that everyone struggles with stuff at times. And depending on people's history and experiences, what that struggle looks like can be different. So again, because of my particular history, I really, really struggle with really, really big feelings. And I'm not very good at managing those big feelings. And it's really helpful for me if someone can sit with me when I am in extreme distress. One of the challenges, because of the way my situation presents, is over the years, people have got extremely overwhelmed and walked out of my life. So again, this issue of abandonment, it's almost a self-perpetuating circle because I struggle with really big feelings. People get overwhelmed and they leave my world. And because I struggle with big feelings, I do things like self-harm, which then gets further pathologized. So that is how I would explain it. There will be good, loving parents out there that have done controlled crying with their child because the experts said that was the thing to do. That is not abuse. That is not neglect. And I think this is part of the puzzle that it would be quite confronting for and I don't have children, but I can imagine how incredibly confronting it must be to be a loving parent who wants the best for their child and yet looking back realizes something went wrong. That is hard. And that is a message, how open is society to hearing that message? And I really like a phrase, there's a phrase, I believe that everybody is doing their best until they know better. Then when we know better, we do better. So there will be people out there who have done their absolute best for their child based on their knowledge and their information and their own personal history. They will have done their best, and yet still that child may end up with issues due to some things that happened in their developmental period.